welcome to the Escape Zone, where it's a good day to save lives. My name is Chris Hoar. I'm your host today, and it's actually my first time hosting, so please bear with me. I'm sure you'll see some unforced errors and maybe even get some content for a viral TikTok clip if you're into that kind of thing. Please follow us here on Rumble at the Escape Zone. And here at the Escape Zone, we bring on guests from political insiders to survival specialists to help you stay ahead of the curve in these uncertain times. Subscribing ensures you never miss a critical conversation, and you're helping amplify independent content that isn't filtered by big media. We cover everything from emergency communication strategies to geopolitical events and risks. And today's show is brought to you by Satellite Phone Store, and you can check them out at sat123.com. So I'd like to bring in my first guest today, JJ Carrell. JJ is a recently retired Deputy Patrol Agent in charge with the U.S. Border Patrol, where he served for 24 years, primarily, I believe, in the San Diego sector, one of the busiest and most volatile stretches of the southern border. JJ now hosts the podcast Truth with JJ Carrell on Worldview Tube, where he dives deep into the state of America's border security, immigration policy, and national sovereignty, amongst other things. He's also a published author with titles including Treason, the Biden Administration's Strategic and Malicious Destruction of America's Sovereignty, and Invaded, the Intentional Destruction of the American Immigration System, both now available on Amazon. JJ is also a documentary filmmaker and a highly sought-after speaker who shared his first-hand experiences and expertise on national media outlets and at major conferences, offering a raw insider's view of how current border policies are playing out on the ground. And you can learn more about JJ and all of his work at jjcarrell.com. So with that, I'd like to bring on our guest, JJ. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate coming on your show and talking about this topic.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. And listen, JJ, you've had such a unique career path. These days, when someone asks you, what do you do? How do you usually respond?
It's a tricky one at first because I wasn't an author and I wasn't a documentary filmmaker. I was just a Border Patrol agent. And I say that just, right? The things that I did were dangerous and important. So now I'm sit in my basement, my studio, my basement. I talk to people and I wonder, is anybody even listening to me? So I just tell people, you know what? I'm just a writer and author. And I have my podcast and I try to spread what I see is the truth that is happening in current events today. And there is not a shortage of things to talk about. I think we live in the craziest time maybe in ever in the history of civilization.
Man, what was it that initially drew you to work with the Border Patrol, if I may ask?
My father was a Secret Service agent, and he was very successful. He did 7 presidential administrations, conducted protection details, and he was very successful. I came out of playing football in college, and I didn't make it into the NFL, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I was like, okay, like a lot of young men, we kind of pattern ourselves after our fathers. And I knew I didn't want to do exactly what my father did. I knew that I needed things to be a little more contact sport, if you will, more instant gratification. And just by the grace of God, the government shut down during that time. The only organization that continued to hire during the government shutdown was United States Border Patrol. And my father said, just go ahead and join the Border Patrol. And if you don't like it after 3 years, every agency will take you, because we were for a long time a breeding ground for all the other agencies. Once I got there though, man, and I'm standing in the station and I'm looking out on the border to Tijuana, and there's this gigantic in the center of Tijuana, they have a Mexican flagpole, and the flag, and I'm not making this up, this flag has to be minimum 100, 150 feet long. It's gigantic. You can see it for miles and miles and miles. And I remember sitting on Imperial Beach platform where all the vehicles are, and I'm looking out on my first day, and I see that flag flapping in the wind. And I remember thinking, man, everything about my life's about to change, and I cannot wait to begin it. And I never looked back after that. And there were some times in the Border Patrol it was very, very difficult, but because of politics, but those over time start to fade away. And the memories I have with my colleagues out there in the middle of the night, getting into fights and arresting bad guys, that's what I cherish and I remember the most.
Man, so your father was in the Secret Service. That's something I didn't know. Was that something you ever aspired to, or?
I looked at my dad. He was a hero, right? So he was, how a lot of kids say, well, my dad's the toughest and my dad's this. And well, my dad was the toughest dude. He was 6'4", 275 pounds. He had jet black hair and real dark skin, and everyone thought he was Italian. And he looked just like a hitman, but he was Native American. So he was a Native American Indian. Um, but he was towering of a man. He was, when you saw Donald Trump, the attempted assassination on Donald Trump, and he had a bunch of women around him, and they were guarding his nipple line, so they had his chest and his throat and his head exposed. My father would have cast a shadow on Donald Trump. That's how big my father was. So he was always bigger than when you're looking up as a young kid, your father's always huge. My father was always gigantic, and I wanted to be like him as a man. And I thought what he did in the Secret Service was incredible, right? How many kids get to say my dad's a Secret Service agent? But I knew I wanted to get into law enforcement. I just didn't know if it was going to be Secret Service. I didn't know if it was, I thought FBI would be too stuffy, and I needed something where it was more physical. I knew that. It was Border Patrol was just a great fit for me. And I had opportunities to go to other agencies, but I just never took it.
Yeah, man, that's interesting. So, in your whole time as an agent, what was the thing that stood out the most to you, or the thing you remember? What one event really kind of defined your time there?
Oh, I don't know if it's a one event or if it's a combination of things. And the two things that stick out to me, one is the absolute corruption of our federal government when it comes to immigration. And I watched it firsthand by both parties, Republicans and Democrats. I worked under 5 presidential administrations. Only one cared about the border, and only one did something about the border, and that was Donald Trump. Everyone else uses the political football to move their agenda. And I remember feeling, as many agents did for our whole careers until Donald Trump came in, that we were exposed, that we were alone, that if anything went sideways, they were going to hang us, and we were pawns. The other thing that separated, and it was really a career of feeling that way, knowing that that political aspect existed, and then the other part of it was doing something that was very dangerous with my brothers and sisters in green, and knowing that we were kind of like by ourselves. And there were times where I was all by myself. There was no one around. It was just me in the middle of the woods with 20 guys, and I had to control them. So maybe the totality of the violence on the border, and I know people don't understand how violent it is. They see the pictures of the camps and people are coming over Joe Biden's time. That's an anomaly. We never did that. That was criminal activity by the Biden administration. But one thing that and I know this sounds or says a lot bad about me, and at the same time a lot of good, is when that bell rung and it was dangerous, I was there ready to fight, and I loved it, and I was very good at it, and I know that the criminal element where I was situated in the Tijuana border, I was arresting rapists and murderers and drug dealers, pedophiles, the scum of the earth all the time, all the time. Did I arrest some maids and yard workers? Yes, I did. But the majority were just filthy animal savages. So there's a fine line between being a really good law enforcement officer and being a criminal. There just is. We share, and maybe some law enforcement guys might disagree with me, but all the ones that I've spoken to don't. There's a fine line between them and us. And in order to be a really successful law enforcement guy, you have to have a little of that savage in you. Meaning I need to inflict as much violence on that person as I need to make that person submit. And I know people at first are going to recoil and go, "Oh, that's police brutality." I'm not arresting people like me and you, where you and I get stopped by a police officer. We're like, "Yes, sir." "Oh, you want me to sit down?" "Yes, sir." Right? We do it.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about guys that see me and they charge at me and we start to fight. And then it's a matter of strength and will, and who's going to win. And I always won. And I took great pride in that.
Yeah, look, I think unlike most people, I mean, look, I lived in San Diego, so I was aware somewhat that we were close to the border. But on the few times I drove south to I can't even remember it was south of El Cajon, where we were really within a couple of miles of the border down there. All the all the street signs and everything were in Spanish. It was kind of like you're already in Mexico,
Mhm.
but I didn't see, what you saw, of course. I think like most of us, we see this stuff on TV, whether it's in a TV show like Landman or something, and
Mhm.
see stuff on the news, and it's impossible for us to really understand. Because on the one hand, I think you have natural empathy for people who are
Mhm.
escaping violence and gangs and terrorism. But then how do you tell the difference between someone who's a true refugee from horror versus someone who's trafficking, whether it's humans or drugs or guns or whatever it is? Because I'm sure to you, like you can't tell by looking at someone what their intent is necessarily, right? You don't,
No.
if they're part of a gang, if they're being trafficked by a gang. I mean, so how did you deal with that? Because I'm sure a lot of these guys were armed to the teeth and so on. I mean, what was the
Well,
reality of that?
that's a great question. Let me answer it this way. When I was young, I was trying to learn my craft and how I was going to interact with people, and I was playing this game of, oh, that's a good person, well, that's a bad guy, and thinking that I was identifying it in real time, right? And I wasn't, because I was young and I didn't have the skill set yet. And I never forget, it was about maybe a half a mile north of the border, a ground sensor bangs off and I cut it off. So a ground sensor will bang off on a trail, and then we know that there's like two or three different areas that these group of people or an individual will run to. So I ran north, got north of it about maybe 100 yards, and waited and waited. Okay, here he comes. Here he comes. I hear him. Take him down. And then I stand him up, and I'll never forget this. He's about 5'4", and I'm 6'3". He's about a buck 35, and I'm 230. And I'm standing there, and we're just looking at each other. And I said, "All right, this is what we're gonna do." I, in my brain, was, oh, he's okay. He's like a gardener. I'm not going to handcuff you. I'll walk you out to my car's right over there. All right. If you run, I'm going to fine you. Let's go. And I threw him in the back of my car, brought him into the processing, and we would drop people off at processing, go back out in the field, and my radio rang. Hey, my number at the time was 449. India 449, this is 819, the station. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you need to come back in. You got a case. And I thought, a case? Who did I catch that? I go back in, and there he is, all 5'4" of them, clean cut, look like just a normal dude, murderer. And that changed my whole way of thinking. Everything that I did from that day on changed. I was extremely aggressive. I was immediately handcuffed. It could be a group of two or it could be a group of 50. Everyone was contained, and I did everything very quickly. I gave you a command, and as I gave you the command, I was moving in, meaning I kneel down. And if I only told you once, kneel down, I was already moving. If they weren't kneeling down, I was kneeling them down for them. And that changed my whole perception. And that helped me in my career, because I look back on, people say, well, did you ever shoot anybody? No, I've come very, very close a couple times, almost shooting people. But I diffused massive shootings and fightings and killings because I was so aggressive, and where I didn't give someone or a group of men the opportunity to think, oh, I can take them. By the time they were maybe getting that in their thought, I was already taking them down. And criminals are like sheep. You take one down, they just all lay down. They're just cowards. They just are. Um, but this played into my career as I moved up the ranks in my promotions, and then I started running really big task forces. I had a 60-man task force that I ran on the coastline from San Diego to Santa Barbara. And being Southern California, Chris, that's a long stretch of coastland. Well, I ran 60-man unit that took down large human smuggling and narcotic boats that would really run ashore, and then have mules to mule the dope up to the highways and take off. So that was my unit that took down all those, and it turned from a anti-human smuggling group to an anti-narcotic, meaning the narco smuggler, the Sinaloa Cartel with El Chapo Guzman, took over all those routes. So we just started ripping all of his loads. But that aggressiveness that I had, I gave that and taught my younger guys, because it would be five of us, in a beachhead in Santa Barbara and 30 smugglers, 30 guys, 5 against 30. How do you do that? Well, you're more aggressive and you're more violent than them, and then you control the situation, and that's what we did, and that's how my whole career and my mindset began all the way back there my first year in the job.
Man, you must have had a lot of adrenaline every day you went to work, kind of knowing what you were potentially going to face that day.
Yeah, in law enforcement, it's either very boring or very busy. And there were times that I would sit there and I think, what am I doing in my life? I'm just sitting here. And then other days I was like, I can't believe they're paying me to do this, right? And there were times where I ran ATV units and we would be on ATVs. I'd be in my jumpsuit, get all my gear. My guys and I would load up our vehicles and take off on our ATVs, and we would ride ATVs and chase people and fight for 10 hours. And it was the funnest time of my life. And it was great. And a lot of people think that's absurd, but that was one of the greatest times. I had 10 guys or 11 guys in my unit, and we roamed the San Diego border, and we just rained terror down on those human smugglers and narcotic smugglers, and we dominated them, and it was awesome. And I would go back if I had any time. I'd go back to that in a second, where we had bonfires and laughing and joking, and then we'd have high speed chases and takedowns and fights and come back and laugh about it. Those were glory days to me.
Yeah. JJ, what kind of equipment did you have, or did the average officer have at the Border Patrol? Communications and weapons. What's standard?
Well, what's standard is per our policies, you have to have a secondary non-lethal weapon, meaning an OC canister or an ASP. So we went through 3 guns when I was there. We had a Beretta, which was garbage, and then we had a H&K, which I really enjoyed, and then at the end of my career, we had the 9 millimeter. Oh, and I apologize for not remembering, but we had that and shotguns and M4s, which we put in our cars. And if you're riding ATVs, of course, you just have your sidearm. And then our radios. Our radios never worked, right? A lot of it was line of sight, or can I actually see the tower and ping it off? And there were dead zones. And then when I worked in the desert, I mean, you'd be out there and you have no radio comms, or you're down on the border in San Diego and I'm in between a hill and I'm in a rock place, or I'm in a tunnel. There's no nothing. Now things have changed because of the technology. But one of the things that we always wanted to have was sat phones. And why? Because the people that we were battling against out on the coast in the boats all had sat phones. We didn't have sat phones. They were able to communicate with each other, and law enforcement could not communicate with each other. And it was a maddening time for a while there, especially on the coastline. As you know, the coastline, your cell service just kind of it feels like it goes with the wind. Like if there's a wind or a breeze, it just kind of comes in and out. And then we'd find these guys with these sat phones, and I know that is the #1 product for sat123.com. And that was, at that time, that was a massive luxury. No law enforcement had that, but the cartels had it because they had endless amounts of money. We would have loved if I had sat phone or sat 123 back then I would have gone to my chain of command and I would have budgeted 10, 15, 20 of those phones. Absolutely. Every one of us would have one in the way that we were working, but we didn't have it. And it was a massive, massive problem for us, because communication is the key, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for our viewers watching who don't know, at sat123.com, satellite phones is the business we started in. It was our first product. And, this was right around the time of Katrina. And what became very clear to us very early on was how essential satellite communications were, because, whether it was landlines back in the day or cell phones now, we all rely on this to be able to communicate just for our personal life or for business or whatever it is. We completely rely on these things. And when you leave your cell phone at home and you go to work or something, you're going out and you realize you don't have it, it's kind of panic, right? It's like,
yeah.
And you're not in any kind of danger or anything. You're so used to having the ability to communicate. But satellite phones work absolutely anywhere, regardless of what's going on the ground, because they do not rely on cell towers. And that was the problem that you had down there on the border, right? It was like there weren't cell towers, there wasn't line of sight because of the hills. None of these things affect satellite phones because the sat phone literally has its own cell tower. Like the one I have here, the 9555, has an antenna you pull up, and that basically is your cell phone tower. And the phone communicates directly to the satellite in the sky, and therefore you can use it anywhere on Earth. And JD, one thing people don't necessarily know is that less than 10% of planet Earth is covered by cell phone service today. I mean, we see these ads on TV for the cell phone providers where they show you all these dots all over the country, and it looks like you can get service anywhere. But as you well know, that's not true. And
No.
it'll never be true because cell towers only go where they can be profitable, right? And if you can't make a profit in the cell tower, you're not going to put it there. And if there's no people around, or not a lot of people, then there won't be any cell service. But sat phones, we've seen them save so many lives over the 20 plus years we've been in business. But even down in areas where tremendous amounts of government money have flowed following disasters like Katrina. I was down in New Orleans and Mississippi, a year after Katrina, and I was meeting with people from Homeland Security and the Sheriff's Department who were graciously kind of giving me a tour of the area. And some of these people were clients, some not. But a year after Katrina had come and gone, and I think it was $12 billion was sent down there by the federal government. That money seemed to have vanished, right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys who were the running the Homeland Security down there, they were in charge, and the Sheriff's Department barely had cell phones, let alone satellite communications. So what we did is we had a bunch of phones with us and we gave them to them. We've always been a strong supporter of law enforcement. We understand how tough that job is. And we as a company are grateful for what you guys do every single day, keeping us safe. But it's a real travesty that these departments don't have the right equipment, not even enough equipment to protect their own lives, let alone do their job properly. So that's always been something we've been big on. And it's eye-opening to hear about how little equipment you had, given the danger you were in.
Yeah, and it was, and we the mantra in the Border Patrol has always been, and it's a good mantra, and at the same time, you can't function like this, and that was we do more with less, and that sounds great until the other side gets more technologically advanced, has more weaponry, has more cars, more vehicles, on and on and on. When we don't, and then it becomes a very, very honest question. Do you, meaning the American people and our government, do you care about sovereignty? Do you care about security? Do you care about being safe? If you do, what is that price tag you put on it? Now, I'm not saying give me a bunch of stuff that we never use and sits in a closet and just gets dust and then it gets old and we throw it away and buy new stuff. No, I'm talking about we need equipment. We need firepower. We're going to see this now. It's going to happen. Once Donald Trump, he has already designated the cartels as terrorist organization. Once we start moving into Mexico and taking care of the terrorists, it's going to be a war. That border is going to be a war zone. There's going to be no more, I just have my sidearm. I need an M4. I need ballistic shields. I need armored vehicles. I'm going to war. This is a war, and I need communications, right? And don't send me out there with I have to have line of sight with the tower, or my encryption's wrong, or I can't communicate with HSI, or I can't communicate with local sheriffs because we're encrypted and they're not. People don't understand the communication part of law enforcement is so important. And I'll give you a great example. What happened when Donald Trump had the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania? They couldn't communicate with each other because they didn't all have the same radio frequencies. Think of that. This is 2025, and or 2024 at the time. We didn't have radio comms that could be shared. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. So that's where we're at. But you're right. When back in the day, and even now, I would say sat phones are absolute a necessity for the Border Patrol, depending on where you're working, specifically on the coastlines and out on the water and or in the desert area where where you can get spun around. If you take the wrong turn or you just close your eyes a little bit, you forget where you're at. And especially if the sun's straight up overhead or night, you have no idea where north, south, east, and west is. You get spun around. It's frightening, actually.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think going, but sat phones were first invented over 30 years ago now. And back then they would cost, 10, 15, $20,000, right?
Yeah.
They were for the rich. And the prices per minute were, 20, $30 a minute. And one thing that we're very proud of at sat123.com that we've done is we've made those phones affordable by making them free with activation. Anyone else in the country charges $1,000 to $2,000 for a handset, and then you have to pay for the airtime. But at sat123.com, you get the phone for free when you activate, and it's about $95 a month. You get 150 minutes for that, and so on. So anyone watching, please go over there and check that out. As you heard from JJ, how life-saving these can be, and it's not just law enforcement that gets in tough situations. Of course, if you look at what's going on the last year with the fires in California or the devastation in North Carolina, when these things hit, if you don't have a sat phone or some kind of emergency communication, you can literally be dead in the water. These things are the difference between life and death. And JJ, one thing I when I'm talking to people about this, they say, well, I have life insurance. It's like, that's great. Your family will get it when you go out. For me personally, I'd rather forget the check. I'd rather just still be here. I'm selfish like that. But no, it really is life-saving equipment.
Well, you know what? I like to say this too as well, because I live in Kansas, and like when I'll go and give a speech across the state or whatever, and I'm driving, there's some empty spots there, man. And then my son is 13. In 2 years he's gonna be driving. I don't want my son, because I'm gonna try to buy some land and build a house, but it's kind of out there. I don't want my son going driving at night or somewhere and he needs me and he can't get a hold of me. So he's going to have a sat phone in his car, and I'm going to have a sat phone with me where he can, like you said, use the sat phone and call me directly on my phone. But he will always have a way to communicate with me, and I will always have a way to communicate with my son. And I think that's priceless. I'll pay that. I'll pay, and I think the service fee is minimal in this world that we live in today. I'll pay that 95 or $99 a month in order to be able to have direct contact with my son. That, because he's priceless to me.
Yeah, no, what I've heard a lot of people say is like, of our customers, is like they've been in a bad situation. They've been in the area where there was a hurricane or the wildfires, and they were okay, but they didn't have cell phone service because the power was out or what have you. But they were able to call their family and let them know they were okay. They had that peace of mind.
Yes.
And, it's like, look, what happens, happens. But the worst part that a lot of people will tell you is not knowing, right? Is my wife okay? Are my kids okay? Is my business burned to the ground? Like, just not knowing those things, and the stress of that is tremendous. So the ability to always be able to reach out and just check in, in and of itself, is something that people have found very valuable.
Yeah. And can I take a minute to tell the audience about one product that I love of yours, and then my son uses it, and it is he has a backpack. He's 13 years old, middle school. He goes is a great school. I'm not fearful, but I don't know, right? So you look at the school shootings. A lot of them are in private schools. So my son goes to private school, Catholic for our faith. And I send my son to school every day with a backpack made from sat123.com. And inside the backpack has a ballistic shield. So my son has a fighting chance if some lunatic comes into his school and starts shooting, or he's getting ice cream with his friends after school, or he's got his backpack. He's got a shot, right? He literally got a shot to live. And this is one product, and I see him. I drop him off for school every day, and this is our time together. And I watch him walk away, and he's got the black backpack on. You have no idea that it's got a ballistic shield in it. But it gives me some peace where I'm like, okay, my son's got a fighting shot if something goes down. So that is one product that I cherish, and one thing that I talk about on my show, and it's one thing that we beat into our heads in law enforcement, is you have to be prepared. You can't go out missing your gun. You can't go out missing magazines, like the reloading magazines for your weapon. You can't go out without your ballistic shield. You can't come to work without your boots. You have to be prepared. And I think the same thing applies to life, is you have to be prepared for when things get really bad, because look around, things are getting really bad.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. And you know, we too for years watched these horrendous school shootings, and what was always clear was that when a gunman went into a classroom, the chances of survival were basically 0% for those kids, and
Hmm.
that's devastating. And the reason was because they had no way to protect themselves at all. They had no fighting chance, and that was exactly why we developed the bulletproof backpack, the ballistic backpack. And you know, we developed it in conjunction with some friends of ours who are Navy SEALs and in law enforcement in San Diego. And because these are people like yourself who are experienced with the situation, they understood what was required. And so we're very proud of that product. It's just $199 at sat123.com or darkbags.com, where we have a full range of these bags. But you know, it's something that look, there's not, as you know, there's no product that you can buy that's going to guarantee survival of a bad situation. But there are plenty of products you can buy that can increase your chances of
Hmm.
survival. And this is one of them. And the back, look, parents, any parent knows that they're going to buy their kid a backpack, right? Every year or whatever.
Hmm.
And whether it costs 100 or 500 bucks, all it does is carry books. This backpack for $199 gives your kid a fighting chance. God forbid the worst case should happen. And I think, you know, it's great to know that we're giving parents at least some peace of mind, knowing that their kids have some way of protecting themselves, you know, if that nightmare scenario should happen. And unfortunately, of course, it happens all too often, JJ.
No, it does. And one thing about the backpack that I love, and I've talked to you about this, my son's 13, he's got sports and he's banging around. He's very conscious of his things that he has. So he's not that kid that just throws stuff away. And he's like, this is my backpack, but he's still a 13-year-old boy, throwing it on the ground, running, grabbing it, slamming it against the door or the wall on accident and running out of the car. By the end of the year, I'm looking at his backpack and I'm like, oh, please just get through these next 3 weeks. So I have to go spend 200 bucks for another backpack, right? And it looks brand new. And he's thrashing it. I see him because I coach his sports, thrashing it. It looks brand new. That's how well it's made. So I'm a cheerleader for your product. I'm a cheerleader for your organization and your company at SAT123, because my family uses your products. And if they sucked or they were breaking down, I wouldn't be championing them. So yeah, so my family is prepared. My family has the Faraday packs. My family to block our cell phones and at night and our money and our credit cards. So we use all this because we want to be prepared. I don't think it's out of I don't think we're weird anymore, right? Whereas the preppers or the people that thought things were happening, they were looked at, wow, they're on the fringe. I believe the fringe is now mainstream. The mainstream is you need to be prepared. And I'm telling you from a guy from law enforcement, you think that law enforcement is going to be there for you, and we're going to try our best to get there. The truth is we'll never get there in time. We
Right.
just won't. If you're being attacked or somebody's stealing your credit cards and stealing your money, somebody's shooting at you, unless we're standing right there,
Yeah.
we can help. After it's an aftermath of it, right? It's the crime scene, and now I got to go hunt for that person or persons that did this. That's the reactionary way of law enforcement. I know people want us to be like the Minority Report with Tom Cruise, where we see in advance what's going to happen. That's not the truth. We try in law enforcement to be as proactive as we can through proactive policing. However, we're just reactionary. You have to be ready to win the war for yourself until we can get there. And man, that might be minutes. It might be 30 seconds. More likely it's going to be minutes before I get there. So I think you need to be prepared. I really do.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And you know, look, I know the media always focuses on the failures of law enforcement,
Mhm.
what it sees as the failures, and yeah, look, any organization of that size is going to have failures, right? I mean, that's you can't eradicate failures, but I think what is impressive to me so many times is when you hear of an active shooter and the police response time is literally minutes. It's a couple minutes when they're on the scene and they're taking action. But you know, it takes tremendous preparation to be that organized, to respond that fast. And you know, these guys are running into these men and women are running into situations that are extremely violent, extremely dangerous, and where their lives are on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And what's not often talked about, or not enough talked about, is the bravery of these men and women. And you know, I don't see enough gratitude for what they do, you know, on so many occasions. And again, look, of course, you have bad seeds in every organization, right? It's not preventable, but the majority of the time you've got brave men and women who are going in, risking their lives to help save the victims or potential victims of these horrific events. And so, you know, just on behalf of everyone, I'd like to thank you for what you have done in your life and your career in helping keep us safe. To getting back to where we are today, with the Trump administration, obviously very proactive on the border. I was looking at, I was reading some news this morning about how they are planning to, you know, go into Mexico, go off these cartels using drones, using whatever it is. And you said that this is going to be a war. How do you think? How quickly do you think this might play out? Because obviously these cartels have had pretty much a free reign for quite a long time, it seems, and they've grown very powerful. They're extremely well funded. How are they going to react? What's going to happen? Is this something we're going to see in the next month or two, or what do you think with your?
Well, I'm waiting, Chris. Like I'm sitting here waiting. Like when are we going? How many more kids or Americans are going to die of fentanyl and hard narcotics that are pouring across the border? So where's the question I have is where's the urgency? And I don't really see the urgency. We can't wait for Mexico, the government, to do it because the Mexican government is controlled by the cartels. That's a narco state. It's just a straight up narco state. And everyone that's in the business knows that. They'll just state straight up. The only part of Mexico that the government runs is probably the Mexico City DF area. That's it. The rest is cartel land. They own everything. It has already been proven that weaponry that has been bought or paid for by the U.S. for Ukraine has been black market sold to the cartels. So actual war machines and weapons and surface air missiles and M4s, etc., that are supposed to be in Ukraine fighting the Russians are now in the hands of the cartels. So it's not going to be like we're going to go in there and they're going to surrender. You have to understand, we're looking at $1 trillion a year business, not $1 billion or $100 billion. It's hundreds of billions, if not $1 trillion a year just on narcotics. Not talking about the human smuggling and the child trafficking and all that, just the hard narcotics. So these people are not going to just stop. So in order to go down there, if I had a minute with Donald Trump, I would say, sir, go down there with the full force of the American military. Meaning, if you have to annihilate sections of that nation, then do it. Because if you half-ass it, it's going to be like Vietnam. We're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of dead soldiers at the hands of narcos, and then it's just going to accelerate, right? Then now we're in a full-blown war. So my idea, when I'm thinking about how would I attack this problem, I go in with everything I have. I'm the biggest, baddest dude on the block. Why am I going to walk on my knees to make the fight fair? Why wouldn't I just run in there and destroy everything? Because they don't care about us. They're destroying our country through hard narcotics. Yes, we're demanding it, but they're supplying it. We have to stop it. But I'm going to tell you, when this begins, it's not going to be for the faint of heart. It's just not. And I don't believe the answer is to send in our SEAL Team 6 and those groups in there. Why? We have jet airplanes that could fly in there and bomb them to smithereens and then send our special forces in there to clean up the mess. But don't send our ground forces in there right off the bat to get picked off because we're talking the whole nation. The whole nation is a narco state, corrupt to the core. When we were on the border, we didn't deal with the Mexican PD. We'd be cordial with them, but I didn't trust. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
They're the criminals.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about coordinated attacks and no, no, no. Military, 100 miles an hour using all of our force. Use the same force that you're using to kill the Houthis that President Trump did 2 days ago. You're gonna have to use the same technology here across our border.
Do you think, I mean, even with President Trump, do you think Congress and the government has the will to do that? I mean, what's your opinion? I know that President Trump has, he's talked about this consistently, obviously through the campaign and now as president. I mean, but what you're talking about there is we're literally sending in potentially ground troops. I mean, this is going to look like Vietnam, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. I look, if I was betting money on Trump, I bet my house on him, right? I believe he'll do it. But when you throw in, it's a great question. When you throw in the House and the Senate, no, I don't trust them. Let me ask you a question, Chris. We've been in almost 3 months now. Trump has done about 300 executive orders. He's changed the course of history. What has the Republican House done to codify that? Nothing. They've done nothing. Where in the hell is Speaker Johnson and those rat bastards? Where are they? And I'm telling you this as a Republican. I voted for Donald Trump not because of the R. I voted for him because he's Donald Trump. I voted for him in spite of the R next to his name. I have no faith, zero faith in Speaker Johnson and the Republican Party. None. Look what they did with the tariffs on Canada. Canada is tariffing our dairy at 270%. China and everyone else is going to Canada and subverting all of the trade agreements into Canada so Canada can move all their products down here, killing our industry. And then four Republican senators, Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Murkowski, and the other lady from Maine, I forget her name, they voted against it. They voted against the American people to help Canada continue to bring down their dairy and sell it to us for cheap while our farmers and dairy farmers can't sell any of our product in their country. I think, and this is just my belief, not anything to do with your company. And I've written about it extensively in 2 best-selling books, and I have 2 documentaries that show it. I stated, and I gave a speech last night to a GOP group in Missouri, and I said the same thing I'm going to say to you. Through all my 24 years experience writing books, etc., I say without hesitation that the enemy of the United States of America is our own government, period. And Elon Musk through Doge has already exposed the absolute theft and fraud of trillions of dollars of our money going to foreign countries that are circling back and paying our politicians. Our government is so grossly corrupt that it's shocking. And this is just what we know about, Chris. What are we going to know in 6 months or a year when Doge has really dug its claws into the meat of the Social Security and the Pentagon? And holy cow, what are we going to learn? More than we can handle, I bet.
No, I think you're right. I mean, look, my point of view, JJ, is that politicians look out for themselves first and foremost, and they answer to the people who put them where they are, right? I don't care if they're Democrats, Republicans, whatever, right? I can't remember who it was. Someone who said that just like the race car drivers, they should have patches on
Yes,
depending on whose money they got, right? Because then at least you'd know who you're talking to. But they don't do that, and the decisions they make seem to benefit 2 people: one, themselves, and 2, the people that put them where they are. And the people who are not represented, seemingly by any of these guys, is the American people.
I agree.
Forget about the politics of it. Calling it a democracy seems a stretch when all of the representatives in Congress are basically owned, bought, and paid for.
I agree.
And it's not by you and me.
No, no, it's not. And there was a woman, a Democrat, came out on Pierce Morgan. I don't know if you saw this when she was talking about the tariffs, and she was brilliant in the way she described it. She's a Democrat. She said all of the money, all of the GDP growth in the 70s and 80s was inside the middle class. That power, that wealth has been transferred to the top 20% of our nation. Why? They're not built, and she said it perfectly. They're not building anything. They're building finance and real estate. They're like just portfolios. They're not creating like we were creating. You could see why the wealth would be in the middle class because that's where all the creation is. That's where all the work is. But somehow we've been left behind because the elites sold our country out. We went to the North American Trade Agreement. We went to trading partner with China. We shipped out all of our middle class and we're shocked that barely people can make ends meet in today's world. This is unbelievable what we're living through. And now we're watching the stock market go absolutely insane. And that's because Donald Trump is trying to level the playing field and make America the primary economic system in the world. And that benefits Americans, not benefits the politicians and the elites. But it's going to take some time to do that.
Well, look, I mean, my reference for this, I'm from England, right? And, you know, I was not around in World War II, but my parents were, my grandparents were. And what I learned was that if you rely on other countries for your core products, your core needs, you're in a lot of trouble. You know, England basically at the beginning of World War II, we ripped up all of the fields, the schools, you know, wherever we could, and we started planting vegetables. We had to make our own products, and we did that because without that, we would have been literally under German occupation within months.
Right.
You know, the Germans were barricading our country with their U-boats, and they were torpedoing supplies sent by America and everyone else. So if we didn't make it, we weren't going to have it. And I think today, if we look at, we've seen over the last 20, 30 years, we've seen the export of all manufacturing overseas, right? And I don't care if it's to Mexico or to China or whatever, you know, should and when we need these supplies, are we gonna get cooperation from Chinese manufacturers if they are attacking our country? Obviously not, no. Right? So how are we going to come up with what we need to defend ourselves and just to survive if we don't make anything here? And this isn't a political point of view. This is just a common sense point of view, I think. You know, that we first and foremost have to be self-reliant and self-sufficient.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, look at our pharmaceuticals come from China. I mean, America used to export everything. We were the breadbasket of the world. When you wanted steel, you came to America for the steel. Think about what our country, our politicians in the corporate elite, look at what they did to us. Honestly, and you're right, this isn't a Democrat Republic. This is a uniparty issue where they have raped and pillaged the United States of America. People think in America we have this tendency to believe what is happening today has always happened. No, we act as if the Pilgrims came off the Mayflower and they said, hey, you're going to create this country, America. Guess what you have to sign up for? You have to sign up for this thing called income tax. And you need it. We created this little booth over here. It's IRS. So go check in. No. Our government created this out of whole cloth in 1913. So it's 12 years ago that they created the system that we're under now. This wasn't in our founding documents. They created Social Security out of whole cloth and then started stealing it. They created something called the Federal Reserve, where bankers run our money. Not Americans, but bankers that are international bankers run our currency. We have done this to ourselves. And if we don't have a radical revolution, a complete upheaval of what this is not the republic our founding fathers built. It's not. This is a sick, deviated monstrosity of what our republic had built. And I think it's time that Americans take our country back. And I'm not saying violence. I'm saying, but we take our country back. But the elites are leaving us no avenue, no recourse to address our grievances because they've bastardized the electoral process. No one on the left, no one on the right trust our electoral system. In fact, I will argue that average Americans do not trust anything. No society can sustain itself with this lack of trust amongst its own people and the institutions that are supposed to be helping us or overseeing our society. Everything has to change, or we're hurtling down to a time in American history that is going to be unprecedented.
No, I think you're right, JJ. And to your points there briefly, you know, again, I wasn't born in this country. I'm an American citizen proudly today, but didn't America fight a war with the Revolutionary War with England over taxation? Isn't that how this country really
Yes,
in the
over
first place?
tea. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what our founding fathers would be doing now with, almost 60% of your income, 65% of your income goes to state, local, and federal government? As a lot of people said, they would have already been stacking bodies. They would have already been gone to war and eradicated our government system. They're rolling in their graves. There's no way this is what they intended, this centralized giant that's running all of our lives. And we have to get back to states' rights. We have to get back to localized government. And also, Chris, we have to get back to law and order. And because I don't believe that we are in a law and order society anymore. Look at people that are ransacking the 7-Elevens, convenience stores, the Walmarts. I mean, that's like savages. That's how third world nations act. We're not, but when you demonize the police and then you demonize and or elevate criminals to idol worship, what do you think is going to happen in your society? It's going to be chaotic. And when it's chaotic, all of your freedoms and your opportunities disappear because we're in a fight or flight. And that's the feeling that I have, and I know a lot of Americans that I speak to. There's this feeling of chaos and disorder. We just feel it, even I live in a very safe area to say, but there's still this feeling of what's going on. Why is it so chaotic? Why can't I buy more with what I have? What happened to the dollar? So America's feeling it, and I'm hoping America wakes up to the fact that our government, our officials sold our sovereignty for 30 pieces of silver.
Yeah, no, I think none of this is helped, JJ, by the state actors around the world who want to end America, who want to destroy our country and our democracy, and they are stoking this fire. Whether it's through social media or you now see so many examples of these governments hiring people to make points, to protest, to cause trouble, because it's cheap, right? It's cheap and easy way to destabilize this country is to turn its people against each other, turn us against ourselves, because a house divided cannot stand. And, so I think we need to be cognizant of that. And we need to, rebuild the faith and trust in America and in this great country so that we can thrive and prosper going forward, not be just a footnote in history, which would be very sad.
It would be sad. And when you look at the major civilizations in the world history, we're no better than they were. So to assume that we're immune from self-suicide and self-destruction, that's naive, right? It's just naive. And the moment that America falls, no one's coming to help her. No one. It's going to be a mad scramble for a global reset of who's going to be the power structure in that. And it's going to be chaotic and it's going to be violent and it's going to be something that I don't want to be involved with. And I definitely don't want my son having to deal with this.
Yeah. Well, let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's all we can do. And JJ, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on and hearing about your very unique experiences. How do people find you one last time online on social media?
Yeah, the best way to go is just go to jjcarrell.com. jjcarrell, CARRELL.com. It has all my socials, all my books on there, everything. It's a new website. I'm proud of it. So, and thank you for having me, Chris. I appreciate it, brother.
Absolute pleasure. God bless, mate. We'll see you again soon.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.